Welcome to today's episode of Rainer on Leadership. I'm your co-host, Sam. I have with me my other partner in crime, although we're not really criminals. We don't do that. It's just a phrase. But his name is Thom. He's my dad. And we do this show together. Many of you have been listening a long time, and we're grateful. Some of you may be new. Welcome. We are going to talk about difficult people, of which none of you are. None of you, listeners, are difficult people. But maybe you deal with difficult people. We'll get to that here in just a second. What do you do when difficult people want to come back to the church after leaving? I think that's something that maybe some of us have dealt with before. But before we do, I want to tell you about this Courage for Life study Bible that Tyndale has produced. I love Tyndale Bibles, particularly their study Bibles. They've done so much here. The Bible can be overwhelming for some, and people can have no idea where to start. Let alone study it. Well, no matter where you open the Courage for Life Study Bible for men or the Courage for Life Study Bible for women, they've got one for men and women, you'll be able to dive right in. That's because there are 1,464 Bible studies in these Bibles. That's a Bible study on each page of the text. That sounds great. So you want to go check out this Courage for Life study Bible. There's a link in the show notes if you have access to churchanswers.com, or you can just remember this for later, courageforlifebible.com. Again, courageforlifebible.com, and you can go get you a Courage for Life study Bible. So thank you, Tyndale.
Can I say something for you before we get into this topic?
Yeah, sure. It's your show. You started it. You can say whatever you want.
It's ours now. I like to drop nuggets every now and then, even if they're unrelated to not those kind of nuggets, Sam. I like to drop nuggets of information. I know exactly where his mind is. For
those of you who are watching on YouTube, you just got a trip. Oh my goodness.
Okay. I do.
Dad's getting old. He's dropping nuggets.
At my age, probably so. So this isn't the kind of nugget I'm dropping right now on this one, but we come across resources quite a bit. Some of them have a price to them. Every now and then we come across a resource that is free. There's this ebook, a free ebook, and it's called Megatrends, 5 Generosity Megatrends. Boy, is it prescient. Boy, is it timely. I'm hearing a lot of things about finances in churches, and I really would like for our listening audience to get it. And so here's what we'll do. We will put a link to that is done by Church Growth Services, great stewardship company, generosity company, but they're 5 generosity megatrends. I really would like to get that ebook, free ebook, in the hands of all of our listeners, and maybe they can pass it on as well. So some of my nuggets have been dropped, and
well, this is gold. What you're saying about this ebook by Church Growth Services is gold. I've actually used this ebook. It's got some good research in it. I've read it. I can absolutely recommend it. Church Growth Services put together more than just nuggets with this one. It's gold. I'll just say that.
Okay, we'll get off that. We'll go from nuggets to difficult people. When difficult people want to come back to church after leaving. Sam, I think you've been a pastor. Yeah, you've definitely been a pastor longer than I was a pastor. And I don't remember a whole lot of instances of difficult people coming back to the church if they left when I was pastor. We did have some who had a reputation for being difficult people that came back. They were under another pastor and they came back to me. So I can relate to some of this. You've been around long enough. You've probably had both.
I have. I would say the first wave tends to be those who left during a previous pastor.
Right.
And then they want to come back because you're the new pastor. And then people are kind of like, do we want this person back? Do you remember how they left? Do you remember what they did? Do you remember what happened? And you're the new pastor and you're like, I don't have a clue. I don't know any of these people. So, I mean, that's certainly the first wave. I think the second wave is people who get upset for some reason, maybe warranted, maybe unwarranted, and they leave, realize they've made a mistake, and then want to come back. And that happens later in your tenure, I believe, just by the nature of what they're doing. And yes,
Right.
I've had both of those happen, particularly here at West Bradenton. And by difficult people, I mean, you could define that lots of ways. Maybe they left during a difficult situation. Maybe they were difficult in a very specific way for a very specific reason, and they're not defined by cantankerousness or anything like that. So we're talking very broadly here is what I'm trying to say. This isn't like, hey, that person was toxic and that person was a gossip and that person tried to divide the church. Sometimes difficult people are born out of difficult situations, and that's why they are the way that they are.
Well, the first one I remember was someone who came back from a previous pastorate. I don't know how long he had been gone. He and his wife both came back, but he was perceived to be the difficult person. This was my church in the Louisville area. And so I said, well, what was the difficulty? What happened? Well, basically, he refused to teach what we were asking all of our then Sunday school teachers to teach. And he just went rogue on us. And when the pastor said, we can't do that. And there was some questionable doctrinal issues, by the way. We just can't do that. Then he left. And so I felt a little bit awkward because I don't want someone to come in teaching aberrant doctrine. So basically what we did and what I shared with him was, hey, this is the issue. Just want to tell you about it. Welcome back, but we're going to hold off on your teaching for now. And if he left again as a result, that would be fine. But he didn't. He appreciated, in this case, he appreciated my forthrightness. That doesn't always happen that way either.
Yeah. That's a case that ended well. I think that there's some questions though that we can work through here to help filter. Obviously there's, the big issue of was there discipline involved, and how bad was this behavior? And we'll get into that here in just a moment. But I think you will likely experience this to some degree. If you stay in ministry and if you stay at a church for a long period of time, you are going to encounter this. I don't think it's going to be widespread. I don't think it's going to be something that's regular. But getting it right in the rare times that this occurs is critically important.
Right.
Because if this is truly a divisive person, or if they left previously under very tense circumstances, them coming back can reintroduce toxicity in the church. It can reopen wounds. It can reintroduce toxicity, reopen wounds, which then can spread very quickly. So you may say, well, this doesn't happen that much. You're probably right. But when it does, you need to be prepared for what you're going to do. And so we've provided this filter. You can check out the links in the show notes. All of this is spelled out there. We've got an outline there. We do this every week with our podcast. But let's start with this first question. How long has it been since they left? I think that's key. They left 50 years ago. They're 85 years old, and they just want to come back to the church that they grew up in. Well, that's kind of a different case than, well, they were just here a year ago and it was bad. So I think that's filter number one, is just the length of time that they've been away.
And, finding out if you possibly can, sometimes you can ask directly. Secondly, what is your motive for returning? You may not ask it that way, but it could be, what brings you back to our church? Just curious. I know you left a while ago. Tell me what brings you back. It may be something that's really good. I did this and I was wrong, and I just want to come back and do church the right way in a church I love. But I don't think there's any big deal. And most church new people who come to maybe join you back again, they're not going to be bothered if you just simply say, what brings you back to our church?
I think you should ask. I think you should ask that of everyone. I think you should ask everyone that is coming from another church in the area. What's their motive? Now, tone is important here. You don't want to be like, well, why are you doing this? But that is a legitimate question that should be asked more. So you're coming from the church right down the road. Why? What brings you here? Or you were here, you left, and now you want to come back, which is what we're talking about on this episode. You just explain that. Explain it to me. What is driving all of this? And if you don't get a clear answer, that's a warning sign to me. If you get a lot of vague sort of talk and word salad, it's like, something's up here. Something is going on.
And if they
Um,
do respond, they're probably going to respond in a push or pull fashion. There was something at my previous church, the one that they went to when they left your church, that is now pushing me back to you, or there's a pull. I realize that this church is really where I should be, and I want to come back. So there could be a push, there could be a pull, or there could be a combination of both.
yeah, and motive may be pure and it may be a really good reason, but you don't know until you ask. And Dad, you've told me this. You've given me this advice. This comes directly from you. I remember when I was going through a hard time in a church, and you said, "Well, Sam, good leaders have a healthy level of paranoia." And I was like, "Well, that's really encouraging. Thank you."
Yes, it was.
But
Other
it
night.
was true. Basically, you were saying, don't don't get so intense that you miss things, and just watch your back. Just be, common sense. There are people out there that want to stab you in the back. Just be careful, so that it's healthy level of paranoia is the key. They're healthy. Um, Paranoid people are terrible leaders, but a healthy level of paranoia. The reason I bring that up is because, what if something is afoul? What if there's a group trying to get some people back for a reason, and you're getting 2 and 3 and 4 people coming back, and they're not really explaining why? Well, if they're all part of a previous power group and they're now all coming back together, that's on my
Be
radar.
careful. Be careful.
Yeah,
So this third question, unpack this. Were you part of the previous situation? Are you referring to the pastor?
yeah, yeah. So if you're the pastor or the church leader that's analyzing, the a person or a group of people wanting to come back, whatever happened that caused them to leave, were you a part of that? So they left and they told you that they didn't like your preaching, but now they want to come back. Well, I haven't changed my preaching and I certainly haven't improved that much. So what does that mean, right? So were you the reason that they left? Were you part of a situation that prompted them to leave? Were you involved as the pastor? And if so, well, then you have a lot more knowledge about what happens and can probably speak into it a whole lot more than, hey, this instance that happened, whatever it was, 20 or 30 years ago, I wasn't there. There are people that have come back to our church here at West Bradenton. They left 30, 40, 50 years ago. Maybe not 50, but 30 or 40 years ago.
Hmm.
And I was like, I was 3. I was 3 years old when that happened. So, that was a long time ago. I was not involved with it at all. So, because of that, they can come back and it can be, the church can feel fresh. There's so many new, when they left, it was a completely different church. And now that they want to come back, we're a completely different church than the one they left. So they're basically coming into a new church, new pastor, new situation, lots of time. That's a much easier way to come back into a church than, we left during your tenure because of some of the things that you did, pastor. And now they want to come back and you're still there. So that's what I mean. This, were you part of the previous situation? If it's a long time ago and you were a kid when it happened, well, they can come back in and not feel, it doesn't feel so bad, if that makes sense.
This fourth question, what was the degree of problematic behavior? That question at least implies that if it wasn't too severe, some people get more mature. Some people grow and they realize that whatever that problematic behavior was wrong. And they can come back. They haven't destroyed the church by leaving. And at the same time, they're coming back would probably be widely accepted. They've grown up a little bit. That can happen. But that's a good question. What was the degree of problematic behavior?
Yeah, I mean, I think of the situation where we had a deacon who tried to kill me. This was at a previous church. And we went and he was unrepentant. And some of the listeners are like, really? Yeah, that really happened. It really happened. He threatened, let me put it that way. And it was a very real threat, so much so that the police department got involved. So we went through the church discipline process and he was unrepentant. He didn't care. he didn't like me, and it wasn't going anywhere. So the only time I've ever had to do this at a business meeting, put somebody up for excommunication. And I hope I never have to do it again. It was horrible. And the church voted 70-30, 70% to kick him out, 30% to keep him. And the running joke was, Sam, 30% of this church wants you dead.
I was going to
And
say that line, but
yeah,
wow.
that is a true story. Now, to the church's defense here, in my tenure there, that was a rough patch. They ended up being really good. They're in a good place. I love that church, and I have still plenty of people there that reach out to me, and it's a good. It sounds terrible, but it ended up being a good situation. Now, this individual, am I letting him come back into the church under any circumstances whatsoever? No, never. The answer is never. What was the degree of problematic behavior?
Severe.
Severe. So much so that,
Extreme.
like, there are plenty of other churches in this community, in this region, that you can go to that are very similar to ours. You do not need to come back here ever. So there are certain things that people do that will preclude them from ever coming back. And I know that sounds harsh, and it may sound like it cuts against the grain of the next point that we're about to make, but I do believe that there are certain consequences to certain actions, which never is the right thing. But then there are other things that are more mild, much more mild, to where, hey, this was a problem. It was a problem at the time, but it was a long time ago, and it really wasn't over the top bad. So yes, you can come back. But that's something that you'll have to weigh, which leads us to the next question. Has reconciliation occurred if needed?
Hey,
Can you
reconciliation is not just, hey, let's get reconciled. Reconciliation implies a behavioral change and maybe a reversal of what you did, at least in one form or another.
Yeah, so I firmly believe this, and I see it all the time, particularly with people who lean towards narcissism. And I know that's a clinical diagnosis, somebody who's a narcissist. So I don't want to overuse that term, or use it, or diminish the power of that term. But um, I do see it with people who lean towards narcissism, where they are the ones who did the offense, they are the ones who did the wrong, and then they want to dictate the terms of reconciliation. No, the one who received the offense, the one who was wronged, should be saying, here's what I believe needs to happen in order for reconciliation to occur. If you're the one who is the offender, you don't get to dictate the terms of reconciliation. That you need to go to the people that you offended and say, what is it going to take? And then the person who received the wrong should then be able to say, okay, if you're really willing to do this, here's what it's going to take. So, if you're allowing somebody back in, and that's an important question, is, has reconciliation occurred, and on whose terms has it occurred? Because anybody can say, I reached out to someone, I talked to them, we're good, we worked through it. But I see that all the time, and that's not real reconciliation. In fact, it's a lie, and that person is still acting in a harmful way. So, if somebody has done wrong and had to leave because of it, whether they were excommunicated or they just left on their own, before they come back, that issue of reconciliation needs to occur. In fact, I'll go on a limb and say, if reconciliation has not occurred and the person who left and did wrong isn't willing to work on the terms of those who were offended, then they shouldn't come back to church.
Totally agree. We may get a bit of pushback, but I totally agree. Last question. Is this person coming back quietly or loudly? And really, how they come back and who they're talking to and the types of things that they're saying, that is going to be indicative of the type of person they're going to be, type of member they're going to be going forward. So you're asking the question, quietly or loudly? I think I know what you mean by quietly or loudly, but give us a quick overview.
Well, I'll tell a story, and I'll try to be very vague with this because I don't have permission to share it, but it is so, so funny. So choir member, you got a church choir, choir member, messed up. We'll just say that. We won't get into the details of how this choir member messed up, but they messed up, and they had to leave for a season. They really needed to be away from the church because of what they did. Well, this person now wants to come back. And this person decides that the best way for them to come back is to wait for the choir to be right in the middle of their song. And then she is going to burst forth through the choir room door, arms held high, shaking them as she enters triumphantly into the choir loft to stand in her usual place. Is that quietly or is that loudly?
Is that true?
Yeah, that's a true story. Yes, that is. I'll have to tell you offline all the details around that, but it is a true story.
I have not heard this one. My good gravy train. My goodness.
And there are some pastors out there who maybe don't have that exact story, and they're going, "Yep, I know. I have that person in my church. Yes, I've had that happen, or something similar." Yeah. So this gets to motive a little bit. And honestly, you can't know somebody's motive unless they tell you. You really can't. But sometimes you see things where you're like, I think I've got a little insight here. The person that wants to come back quietly, reconciled, and just wants to be home. I've heard that a few times at West Bradenton. Hey, I left. It was a while back. Sam, I just want to be back home. And I'm really willing to do whatever it takes. I don't want any attention. I just want to sit in that pew that I sat in 20, 30 years ago. And I just want to be in my home. That's a completely different perspective. That's somebody who is very humbly trying to make amends and to move back into a church that they feel like they left in a way that they shouldn't. So I think this last question is a very important question. Are they coming back quietly or loudly? And if it's loudly, you might need to show them the door, but not the choir door that they bolt that they just kind of bolt through in a very triumphant way.
Well, I got to say this, Sam. You dropped your own nuggets. Those were really good, really good. I'm going to finish this podcast. I won't call this nuggets because I like California Baptists too much to now that we've carried that metaphor so far. I like them too. I like them too much to even tie it there. I'm going to give you something that is just a real great opportunity, and it's the California Baptist online program for high schoolers to get college credit. That's a long phrase, but that's basically it. And it's a program that's open to third culture kids, homeschool students, private, public school. It's wide open. And you can start students any 8-week session. So you're a high school student. You can do summer, fall, spring. Each semester has 2 sessions. And you've got all these kind of opportunities. And so pastors, tell your students about this. And anybody that's listening, the first class at California Baptist like this for high schoolers is free. And then subsequent classes are only $166 per credit hour compared to the $613 usual cost. Wow. You get 30 courses to choose from. You're getting university credit while you're in high school. You can do it on your own time, at your own schedule. And you get to college and you're already ahead. You may be that you decide to go to California Baptist. That would be a great decision. You may decide to take those hours and offer them for transfer to another university. It's a great program, and it's not just high school students sitting with high school students. You're going to have real college courses with actual college student peers. So check that out. You can see it in the show notes. calbaptist.edu/PCC is how you can go there. California Baptist is doing a great work. We appreciate their ministry. We appreciate their culture. We appreciate what they're doing for the kingdom. Truly a Christian university. As always, thank you for being a part of Rainer on Leadership. A lot of good information on this one. We try to provide you a lot of good information on every show. So we'll see you on the next episode. Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth, if you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just two. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just 2 or 3 things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the church is doing it or not.
Bingo.
And then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis?
Double bingo. Well? And maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves.
We have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool. There's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.